definitely not stuff like this. So if you like what you see here,
She's coming back in the lead.
Or here,
I thought you had sports professionals.
check us out on youtube.com/RamonaRamsTV.
That's sweet!
Who knows, maybe it'll turn out like this guy someday. Remember, youtube.com/RamonaRamsTV. Hope to see you there.
Hey, Highland Elementary took some time to stuff the bus for Operation Safe House. Come check it out.
It started with an email from the Sheriff's Department and the Riverside Transit Agency. They were interested in stuffing the bus. We saw it. We thought it would be something our kids would enjoy. And so we put the word out to our parent community. We're always trying to help our kids learn how to give back to the community. And our parents and kids responded. And here we are.
It was special because we got to stuff the bus. We put like toothpaste, shampoo, and deodorant.
I think that our students are learning academics every day, but to be able to volunteer we never want to have them underestimate the heart of the volunteer. And I think that's what they get out of it, is recognizing that they are empowered and they can give back. Even at their young age, they still have the power to give back to their community.
I think it's important to help others to make them feel better. Because everybody's human, everybody is equal.
Safe House is an emergency shelter for kids 11 to 18 that might be homeless in a crisis situation. They either come through us either via the police department, the sheriff's department, or the school district can refer them over because we go out and we educate the counselors. Well, when the kids come into our program, they're coming from an emergency situation. They're coming out of a crisis situation, so they're not thinking, oh, I better grab a toothbrush or I better bring some soap. They're coming in with what they have on, and sometimes they may come with no shoes. So when they come into our program, we want to be able to provide those basics for them so that they can actually focus on what.
We don't have a quorum yet. No quorum. I could go. Should I go ahead and start? Should I go ahead and start?
Let's give a couple here, yes.
Good evening. Welcome to our agenda for the Riverside Unified School District for January 20th. And we have just returned from closed session. We did take some action at that time. The board voted 5-0 to approve a settlement for existing litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9A. And also, we have some jobs to announce, and I will turn that over to Dr. Hansen.
Thank you, Mrs. Alavi. And I'm pleased to announce that this evening the board took action for the following employees. And as your names read, if you'd please stand, we've hired a new director of secondary education in our school district, and his name is Mr. Daryl Hansen. If you'd like to stand, Daryl. Daryl currently is the principal of King High School, where he has been since 2004. He started as the assistant principal there and then has been the principal since 2010. He started his teaching career in 1999 in Alvord, where he started out as an English teacher. He was an athletic director. He was the football coach, head baseball coach, and so he has had a lot of experience, and we're really pleased to have him come and join the school district as the director of secondary. And I just want to be clear that the position, however, doesn't start until after the school year. We want to finish King High School strong, and he is the principal there, and we will then begin to work with that staff as we go through and apply the position and look for a principal to provide the strong leadership that Daryl has provided for so many years. The other person that is here, I'd like to just have her stand and be recognized, is Beth Martin. Still here? Beth. Please keep standing. A little unusual, but still want to have Beth recognized. Beth is going to be a new position, administrative assistant to the superintendent to the school board, more specifically the secretary of the school board. And she began her career in 1995 back in Saddleback Unified School District, where she spent a number of years. She came to Riverside Unified in 2001, where she had several years, 15 years at the school site. Last working as a principal secretary. She has been in the district office for the last year, working in curriculum instruction as the assistant to the director of secondary education. And so we're grateful to have her come and join and work closely with the school board. Congratulations, Beth. Mm-hmm. And the last person, if he is here, if you'd please stand, Ron Weston. Ron. Ron has been chosen as the new coordinator for career technical education. We refer to those as CTE courses. And he began his teaching career in El Rancho Unified School District back in 2001, where he was a teacher and a dean of students. He came to Riverside Unified in 2005, where he's done a multiple of different jobs, from instructional services specialist at the district office, oversaw his time when he was at the district office, history, social science, CTE courses. The last several years, since 2009, he's been at the Educational Options Center, we refer to as EOC, where he has been an administrative designee, teacher, and he has overseen the COPE and the Opportunity Program. So, Ron, congratulations, and welcome back to the district office as the coordinator of CTE.
Thank you. And now we'd like to reconvene open session and introduce the Riverside Polytechnic High School Army JROTC Color Guard presentation. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Julia McDonald, a sixth grader from Pachapa Elementary School.
Put your right hand over your heart.
Wait just a minute. They're going to bring the flag up. Okay.
Mark time. Mark. Ready. Up. Left. Face. Shoulder to shoulder. March. Breathe in. Colors.
Go ahead.
Right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, by liberty and justice for all.
Harry, colors. Right, face. Forward, march.
Mrs. Lock-Dawson, Julia, if you'd stay up for just a
Julia, if
minute.
you can come on up real quick. Julia is our pledge ambassador for this evening. Good afternoon, good evening, Julia. She is a 6th grade student at Pachapa Elementary School and has been at Pachapa since 1st grade. She is recognized by the entire 6th grade teaching team as a dedicated, hardworking, and responsible student. She's well liked by staff as well as her peers. She is a member of the 6th grade leadership team. The team is a new endeavor at Pachapa, and Julia, along with the other students, has learned how to support different school functions sponsored by the PTA. She has also been a member of the band for 2 years and enjoys dancing. So everybody please thank Julia. And Julia, if you want to stay there, I've got a certificate to bring to you. And you can introduce your family while I have you. Who do you have here tonight?
I have my mom, my sister,
Your mom?
my mom, my little sister, and my dad.
And Grandpa, okay. Teacher and your principal here too? Yes. You want to introduce them?
I have my sister, Mrs. King, and my principal, Mrs. Lee.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. I've got the certificate for you. You can click on. Thank you, sweetie.
Thank you so much. And now we have a treat. The Miller Melodies Choir from Frank Augustus Miller Middle School will perform for the board under the direction of Rhonda Bauer. Yes.
This is our off-color group. This is a special group. These students have a very rigorous audition to be in this class. We're doing club time, which means 26 minutes, 4 days a week. We need to do very little, but we do a lot of work in there. And these are the top of the top best students that we have. And we are very pleased to work with them tonight. Michelle is our principal, and our parents will be Benedicamus Domino. below. Christum natum adoremus. Cum novum cantico.
Follow that star to Bethlehem. 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 Follow,
follow, follow, follow, follow, follow, follow that star to Bethlehem. See the wise men traveling far. They were told to follow that star. Bright star shining, filling the night.
following that guiding light.
Follow, 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 follow that star to Bethlehem. Follow that star to Bethlehem. Oh, star of wonder, star of night, star with royal beauty bright, westward leading, still proceeding, guide us to thy perfect light.
Follow that star to Bethlehem. Follow that star to Bethlehem. Follow that star to Bethlehem. Follow,
Follow, follow, follow, follow that star to Bethlehem. Follow, follow that star to Bethlehem. Follow that star, follow that star, follow that star to Bethlehem.
Thank you so much. That was quite a treat. Good work, kids. So difficult to sing a cappella. All right, thank you. And to Julia and her family, if you would like to leave and go do your homework, things like that, you're more than welcome to leave at this time. We have a couple of recognitions that now we would like to make. Our first is a presentation of Riverside Polytechnic High School Solar Cup team and advisor Greg Aniol. Mr. Garcia.
Yes, good evening, Mrs. Ellery, Dr. Hanson, members of the board. I'd like to ask Principal of Poly High School, Mr. Michael Rowe, to please come on up. And as he's coming up, also would like to invite, I believe with us are Rachel McGuire from Western Municipal Water District, who's our Community Affairs Supervisor, and Sharon Gutierrez, who's the Education Coordinator at Riverside Public Utilities. And this is, we're very, very grateful for the support that these two organizations continue to provide our schools in our district. And I'll let Mr. Rowe expand a little bit more on that. And thank you to Rachel and Sharon for being with us today.
Thanks, boss. All good. I'll go by Rachel. That's fine, especially complaints. Madam President, Dr. Hanson, members of the board, I'm pleased to be here tonight to congratulate Mr. annual, as well as his students for the work that they've done with the solar project. Even more grateful that Rachel McGuire from the Western Municipal Water District Community Affairs Supervisor, as well as Sharon Gutierrez, Ed Coordinator for the Public Utilities, have made such a generous donation to our program. And super stoked at the way you've inspired kids to work down this path. I know it's a passion of yours, and with this gift, I think it's just going to continue to grow and facilitate with our students. So thank you very much.
Good evening. As noted, my name is Rachel McGuire, and I am here on behalf of Western Municipal Water District. One of my favorite parts of the job is getting to come out to presentations like this and being able to honor the wonderful work that's done by students in our own backyard. And as we saw earlier with that beautiful presentation of music, there's so much talent right here in Riverside. Just to give you an idea, when we talk about the Solar Cup competition, it's a boat building competition that goes over a year long, but it's so much more than just building a boat. Students are learning about teamwork, they're learning about science, they're learning about technology, they're learning about math, and even visual arts. So it's very well-rounded for all the students. Next slide, please. So just a few details on our Solar Cup with Riverside. This year is their first year. They are our rookie team, so we're very excited to have a new team in the mix. And this is a partnership, as was mentioned, with Riverside Public Utilities. We work very closely together to ensure these students are getting the most out of their experience. And other teams we're representing this year are going to be Elsinore and Lakeside High School, as well as Norte Vista. Next slide. So Solar Cup, just to give you a little background, is actually put on by Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. And they run all the way up from the Ventura area, all the way down to San Diego, and out to the Riverside area. So actually competing in this competition, we're going to have about 700 students from all those schools. And it's a very coveted spot to be able to be one of the teams doing Solar Cup. So these are just some photos from a recent boat building date they had, where all the students come together, their teachers out too, and they're all building their boat and working on it. Next slide. Oh, this is actually a video. Look at that. Yes, they're all working on the boat still. So that was what goes on at those workshops, and it's really a great opportunity, as I mentioned, for teamwork and for all those students with various strengths, from anywhere from doing visual arts and having to design the boat design to all the folks doing engineering and learning about that. It's really a great opportunity for them all to come together. And I invite all of you, if you are available, please save the date, May 15th to 17th. Going to be at Lake Skinner, right outside of Temecula, and it's a wonderful event. I've been there several years in a row, and just seeing all the students come together and all the enthusiasm, and it just blows your mind how smart and talented they all are. So without further ado, I'd like to do our official check presentation, and thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
Let me get on the other side of the road. Yes, sir. Oh, got one more coming too.
Oh, wonderful. There you go. That way we're all balanced out. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you again. I'll take that on his behalf.
Do you have to have the clicker for them? Yeah.
So many thanks to Western Municipal for the for a little solar money. We appreciate it very much, and our students will get a good experience out of that. Thank you very much. And now we will have the recognition of the Martin Luther King High School girls tennis team as recipients of the Riverside County Office of Education Academic Athletic Team Award. Mrs. Carmen Day.
Good evening, Board President Alvey, esteemed board members, Dr. Hanson. I have the opportunity to give a warm welcome to one of our representatives from Riverside County Office of Education, Dr. Hilma Griffin-Watson, and we are so grateful for their annual recognition of our wonderful top student athletes in the county.
Thank you. Well, good evening, Board President Alvey, Dr. Hanson, Superintendent, and members of the board. It's good to be back in RUSD again. It's like coming home. But my pleasure tonight is to present to the Martin Luther King High School girls tennis team the Academic Athletic Awards for the highest GPA in the fall sports. This is the 15th year that the county office has been presenting these awards, and it's a good way to recognize the good collaboration our athletes have in doing great academics. So with a GPA of 4.32, that's amazing. We'd like to recognize our girls tennis team from Martin Luther King High School, and I'd like to call forward the coach of the team, Miss Becky Gagnon, to come forward, and she will read the names. I will present her with the plaque. She will read the names, and then I will give each of the girls their patch. Okay? So
would you
girls,
like them to all come up together? Why don't you all come up, girls?
so the inscription on the plaque reads, Riverside County Office of Education Academic Athletic Team Award 2014-2015 to the Martin Luther King High School girls tennis team, 4.32 GPA. That's amazing. Awesome job. So proud of all of you. So we'll call the names, and I have your patch for your Letterman jacket. I know many of you don't wear Letterman jackets anymore, but if you do, it's a beautiful patch.
No, they all wear their Letterman jacket.
Okay, you do have your Letterman jacket. So you have the names?
How about if we go in order of our grades?
Oh.
We'll start with our freshmen.
Well, I have them in order.
Oh, do you?
Okay, of alphabetical. So, put there, right there.
Is Hannah Chung here tonight? Hannah is here? Hannah Chung. Faith D'Amico. Anika Desar. Simrina Desar. Talia Elliott.
I'm going to give you this and you guys put it out, okay? Congratulations.
Zoe Gonzier. Sanjita Gowda. Matila Mahali. Sarah Nami. Benita Patel. Bansri Patel. Jessica Tomlin, who could not be with us this evening. She's at mock trial. Christy Tassau and Ashley Tassau, and they were unable to be here this evening. And Emily Wang. Thank you so much. This is for you again. Thank you very much. Congratulations.
Coach, do you think you could fill us in a little bit about the team and how they did this year?
Sure. Every year it just gets better. I've been coaching at King since it opened. This is an incredible group of girls. I believe it was it last year they won this award, and they decided this year that they wanted to do it again. So this was their goal from the beginning, and they didn't increase their GPA this year. The girls went 10-0 in league, and I'm sorry, I don't remember our overall. I never do. I think it's a guy thing, but we lost a couple. We did go to the quarterfinals. We were moved up in division. We're in Division 2 now for CIF, so we're in the highest division in the area for tennis, but they did go to the quarterfinals this year. So they did a great, had a super successful season. And two of our girls, Sanjita and Simi, why don't you guys stand up real quick? They were selected as first team all-league in the entire area. It was an all-area tennis.
Wow.
And
Thank you.
that was for doubles. They were also the doubles champion of the entire league individually, so they had a tremendous season, and also Sanji was the captain. But just an incredible group of girls. They just get better every year. We're so proud of them, and thank you.
That's
for the
great.
time.
Could I have all the tennis families stand up too? We know those good grades don't happen without a lot of encouragement from home, so thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. That's an exciting award. We're now going to have our reports by our high school representatives. Let's start with Mae Johnson from Riverside Poly High School. Wait just a minute, Mae, till they go. Just a second. All right, go ahead.
Good evening, Madam President Allaby, Dr. Hanson, and members of the board. My name is Mae Johnson, and I will be reporting on behalf of Poly High School. A lot has gone on in Poly since the last time I reported, so I'll get right to it. The hashtag PBCollegeBound has been created to celebrate our recent college acceptances from our senior class, some namely ones from Wake Forest University, Duke University, and Columbia University. And seniors who are accepted get their picture taken with a poster of their school and have it posted on the school Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and our website. Poly's motocross program is gaining national attention for its effort in establishing an academic pathway into the various industries within the sport. Our principal, Dr. Rowe, has personally reached out into members of the industry, and over the course of the last 9 months have worked together with them to create many opportunities for these students. Beginning in December, students and teachers from Poly were tasked with creating the Dream Supercross track with the help of multivariable calculus and applied physics from some of our AP students. And students will be working behind the scenes at the Anaheim Stadium event January 29th and 31st. Poly High School was recently celebrated for its very good use of technology and social media to improve school-wide culture this past weekend up in Monterey, California, from the California League of Schools. On February 25th, Poly High School will be hosting a screening of the film The Race to Nowhere, which will lead into student-led discussion groups with some of the community's prominent figures, and which they will be discussing the current state of education in the United States and where it will be heading in the future. Recently, an app has been made accessible for Poly students that allows them to anonymously report bullying on Poly campus. And to make this more easier for all Poly students, QR codes have been posted all over the campus so kids can just scan it with their phones, and it'll take them directly to a form where they can fill it out and report any bullying. Poly has begun to establish their AP Academy, which, similar to North's IB program, will hopefully sway students to attend Poly High School as the school offering the most advanced placement courses in the district. Students in the program will be able to pick a certain subject as their specialty, and as the program puts them on the right track for success in that certain field. Recently, a graduate of Poly High School, Cody Smith, passed away from cancer. The entirety of Poly was heavily affected by this loss, but through it we have learned not to take this time as a time to mourn, but rather as a time to celebrate his life. And over 1,000 people came to celebrate his life at his celebration of life ceremony, and the legacy of Cody and his number 45 for the football team will be implemented into next year's Polypied program as an example of what a true Poly Bear looks like, and to remember and honor his name. Thank you.
Thank you, May. Have you heard anything from any school yet?
Yes.
You're still waiting.
I've got accepted to 5 colleges so far, so I have a choice, but I don't know where I'm going yet.
Okay, well, I'll be anxious to hear when you decide.
Okay, I'll keep
Are
you
there any
updated.
questions from the board members?
I'd like to ask
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And thank you for your report, May. This anti-bullying app, is it exclusive to Poly, or is this something we have in the district?
I'm not sure. I do not think Poly developed the app personally, so I could see being available for all schools throughout the district, but I know personally that it has been implemented at Poly very recently.
Very good. Thank you, Miss.
Very good. Thank you, May.
Thank you.
Tracy Doan from Ramona.
Good evening, Madam President Alavi, Dr. Hanson, members of the board. My name is Tracy Down. I'm here to represent Ramona High School and to inform you about all the recent activities. For our Link Crew program, we had a movie night in December, and our goal was to have a bonding activity between the Link Crew leaders and the freshmen. And then we also will be having a freshman summit since our first semester ended on the 16th. So we'll have one-on-one conversations between each Link Crew leader and the freshmen, and to find out if there's anything conflicting with their grades and encourage them to do better. For our school, we recently had a blood drive on December 16th where over 150 students donated. Our finals were last Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and then students were released at 12:50. And then we also had our mid-winter on Friday the 16th afterward, and then the theme was Under the Sea, and then we had a photo booth with unlimited free pictures and an unlimited free dessert table and a balcony with the view of the Canyon Crest Country Club. For our United Student Body, we attended a leadership conference at Disneyland on November 24th, and were able to learn new ideas to bring back to our school from the different sessions that we attended. And we've been working on preparing for our winter pep rally, which will be on January 30th. And as a tradition, every year the senior class give the freshman class a gift, and this year we decided to make them snacks bags for the finals, and we also included punchlines of the names of the snack that we put in there for them. And for our performing art, we had our winter concert for choir the 16th of December, and then we had our band concert the 17th, and then a piano Christmas recital the 18th. And on the 19th, we have a performing arts holiday assembly with like all the singing and dancing, where the whole school gathered in the auditorium, and there were Christmas skits, piano and guitar performances, and then a traditional Christmas medley performance that we do every year. And our marching band went to the state championship at Fresno on November 21st through 23rd, and they also performed at the Hollywood Christmas Parade on November 30th. And as for athletic, our varsity girls water polo team won the Constellation Championship in the San Gordonio tournament. And then our girls basketball team's most recent win was against Hillcrest, 38-33, and the win streak is now 9, and their record is 17-5. And then we will be having our 3rd annual alumni softball game on Saturday, February 7th at our varsity softball field. And also our boys basketball finished 4th in the San Bernardino Kiwanis tournament. And that is all for my speech. Thank you so much
That
for
is
listening.
great. Thank you, Tracy. Was your Under the Sea theme a Back to the Future kind of thing? Because you know that they're having that thing this year because it's 2015 and it references the 2015 year?
We just made it kind of like Little Mermaid and
Oh,
all the
I
fish.
see.
And
Okay. Sounds fun. Sounds fun. Does the board have any questions? Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.
Jacqueline Cervantes from the Educational Options Center. Oh, she wasn't? Oh, okay. Well, we're sorry, we missed her. Allison Baird from John W. North.
Hello, President Alavi, Dr. Hanson, and members of the school board. My name is Allison Baird, and for the past 2 months, North High School has had some excellent and very memorable events that I would like to share with you guys today. Firstly, all 3 of our leadership groups at North, our Multicultural Council, United Student League, and Renaissance Leadership Group, have been working together to create a very positive atmosphere at North. One of the first things that we did to increase school spirit was to host our winter assembly on December 12th, in which members of our varsity sports teams as well as academic teams were honored in front of everyone. The assembly also featured a special presentation, a nice little choir concert from our chamber singers, which brought a lot of cheer and joy to our assembly. Also, this week is our Midwinter Spirit Week, and in front of you, you guys will have a colorful packet that will highlight all of our lunchtime activities and dress-up days this week. And all of these festivities will lead up to our special Midwinter Hollywood Classic Ball, which will take place this Saturday, January 24th, and we are super excited for that. Also, to connect students, and especially freshmen, to our school, Renaissance held a special final exam cram during January 12th through the 14th. And the final exam cram was an opportunity for all students to come to the library during those 3 days and receive some peer tutoring as well as some delicious snacks for them to enjoy. And you may be wondering why you have hot Cheetos in front of you. Well, those hot Cheetos were actually given to every student on our honor roll to reward them for all of their special academic achievements, as well as a juice box. So that's good. We're very proud of our community involvement for the past 2 months. USL hosted our holiday canned food drive, and as a school, North students and staff collected over 11,000 food items, which came out to over 3 tons of food that was all donated to our Community Settlement Association of Riverside. And we're especially proud of that number because it is our highest in 10 years. Also, this past Monday, members of our United Student League, Black Student Union, as well as our Multicultural Council participated in the MLK Junior Walkathon from the Stratton Community Center to RCC, and that was wonderful. In addition, boys basketball held their Brick House tournament December 3rd to the 6th, in which we hosted our Canadian friends from Edmonton, Alberta, Jasper Place High School friends. They came out and had a special kickoff game in which the entire school got to cheer for both teams. It was very exciting. Looking forward, February 6th, USL will hold its 50th celebration tailgate leading up to the girls and boys basketball games that evening. There will be free food, activity booths, as well as entertainment from North's Harlequins. And Ms. Porter gave you guys all an Evite, and we would love for you to attend. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Allison. That's great. I even had a chance to go to a fundraiser. You're raising money to send your basketball team to China, right?
Yes, our basketball team and student leaders will get the opportunity to travel to Xiamen, China, our sister city, as well as to Hong Kong. So it's very exciting.
That's very exciting. Does the board have any questions?
What day was the basketball game? 5th?
The basketball game will be February 6th.
6th.
Yes.
Very good. Thank you, Allison.
Thank you.
Okay. And thank you to all our high school representatives. If you'd like to go home and work on homework, we would love that. So thank you for your good reports. And now I'd like to have the district superintendent's report. Dr. Hanson.
Thank you, Madam President Alavi. Members of the board, it's great to be back together. It's been a month before the holidays since we last met, and it's good to be back together. And again, just seeing the student presentations this evening, the recognitions to our schools, and to hear the high school students report. We have an incredible amount of talent in our district with the students. It's just a pleasure to see them. Tonight, the superintendent's report is going to be divided into 3 different areas. I first want to share some bright spots and some recognitions that have happened in our schools to specific employees and things or students and things such as that. Then I'm going to invite our Chief Academic Officer, Mrs. Lynn Carmody, to come forward and give an update with things that are happening in educational services. And lastly, we'll invite Dr. Lewis to come forward, and he's going to help prep the board and share some things with you as we prepare for our February study session, specifically talking about the possibilities of a a school bond for 2016, and some surplus properties that was presented to the board from the 7-Eleven committee years ago, or a few months ago, with some also other properties that may be of interest to you. But first off, I'd like to bring attention to recognize a young lady, a King High School student. Her name is Somya Kuramana. She was named one of 300 Intel Science Talent Search semifinalists. Soma earned this prestigious honor for her work for her project, and listen to this title, as an eco-friendly RNA interference-based insect control for management and citrus greening diseases using a model system. So that's an easy title to remember. But she was selected for this Intel honor from more than 1,800 entrants from 450 different high schools, 41 states to include Puerto Rico, 5 American international high schools overseas. And so we're just very pleased for her accomplishment and the recognition that she has brought to the district. She also earned the gold medal, you may recall, for her project in the 2014 RIM Science and Engineering Fair, and honorable mention at the California State Science Fair. So congratulations to Somya and for her work and recognition. Also like to recognize the entire Earhart staff and Principal Sean Curtin. Maybe you've heard, but the entire Earhart Middle School staff had their National Avid Demonstration status renewed. A visiting team came in and spent some time with them, and so Earhart has received a 3-year certification for their Outstanding Avid program, which is school-wide. And it's interesting to note that approximately 20% of the students at Earhart are enrolled in the Avid program. Besides, they use those successful strategies throughout the entire district. And last, a shout out and congratulations to all the employees. Riverside participates, Unified specifically participates in our Greater Area for United Way. And we brought in as a district with staff and students just under $46,000 to the United Way program. That's a 15% increase over last year, or $6,000 increase. And special thanks to Mr. Antonio Garcia, Robin Wood, and naturally our school sites and all the departments that participate and employees that contribute to that great cause of United Way. So just a few of those bright spots and recognitions to Soma, to Earhart Middle School, and certainly to all the employees that participate in United Way. I'd like to invite Miss Carmaday to the, I just gave her promotion, Ms. Carmaday to the podium to talk about an update for Ed Services, and then again, Dr. Lewis.
Thank you. Before I do that, I just want to mention Dr. Hansen talked about the wonderful students we have, and on top of that, I'd like to recognize the fantastic teachers we have as well. One in particular, Dr. Stephanie Nechayev, an Arlington High School English Language Arts and ELD teacher, was just appointed by the State Board of Education to be part of the reviewer for our 2015 instructional materials for English Language Arts and ELD. So that's pretty exciting, and obviously she was requested because of her expertise. So I'd like to congratulate her as well. In educational services, we've been working on multiple things. One in particular has been the emphasis on our science program. We officially received the California Math and Science Partnership Grant. I think we've mentioned it before, and that brings approximately $1.6 million to professional development for our teachers, where they'll become more familiar with content, pedagogy, the new next generation science standards, and over a period of 3 years, we'll be going through some professional development. What's exciting about that is it fits perfectly with some of the most recent work we're doing, and that is to take that idea of science, technology, engineering, and math, and ensuring that every one of our students across our district has a rigorous and supportive program so that they can be prepared to choose the field of science if they would like to do that, and we find that they have a talent in that. So we're looking at engaging them, and we put a advisory panel together that just had their very first meeting last week. We have a representative from the mayor's office, UCR, Riverside Community College, parents, teachers, science experts. So we're forging on that journey to really look at our program TK through actually 16, through graduation and beyond for all students. I'd also like to point out that we're doing something new this year. We've done a good job targeting our middle school young ladies and bringing them on board with opportunities in science, technology, engineering, and math, STEM. And this year there was an idea, and so we are partnering with Bournes and UCR, and we're doing something called Inspire Her Mind. And this is for high school students, 10th graders, and the idea is to really get them engaged in the opportunity for careers in sciences. So something exciting that we're going to be doing that will actually be held on February 5th, so it's coming up next month. I'd also like to give you a brief update. You had been told that we had initial meetings with Chancellor Wilcox from UCR and Dr. Isak from Riverside Community College. We've had 4 follow-up meetings since that with Riverside Community College and had started to look towards a early spring date for a memorandum of understanding with them that allowed for the opportunity for our students to take pathway courses and those college-level courses on our campuses. The idea behind this is that we'll also get some of our students to go on to the Riverside Community College campus too, all of which will promote their expertise and the level. We're targeting specifically STEM, the Riverside STEM Academy. We're also looking at pathways potentially in law and education. For now, it's just a pilot, so more information to come on that, but I did want to give you a little bit of information about that as well. A brief update on LCAP. We had our first advisory committee. The steering committee met, and we looked at some of the regulation changes. We looked at how we will be monitoring using our monitoring tool, and we also looked at how we will be developing our year 4 goal, monitoring what we're doing in year 1, and then also modifying year 2 and 3. So it was a complicated discussion that we had. We talked about marketing and getting community engagement in the process, as well as how we would maybe hold focus group meetings and then some of the same types of meetings, outreach meetings to the community at our high schools. So that's exciting, and we'll be meeting again at the end of this month and then in February. Finally, I just wanted to mention our professional development redesign initiative. We had the opportunity to work with Pivot Learning Partners, and were selected to have Bill and Melinda Gates fund our examination of our professional development system here in Riverside. Very exciting. The idea would be that we're revamping our system and really looking at the voice of our teachers and making sure that we're meeting their needs, having them be part of the planning and development of a system of professional development that best serves them. So it's definitely targeting what's best for our users. And that was a little long this evening, but I wanted to make sure you knew exactly what we were doing in educational services. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Lewis.
Mrs. Alavy, Dr. Hanson, members of the board. This is, if you will, a preview of coming attractions for the study session on February 17th. Two major items for discussion. One would be the properties that we've looked at for surplus. That presentation was made back in September. The Operations Board Committee in December looked at these properties and the properties of interest and started the dialogue of what might be some suggested opportunities that we might pursue. So the study session allows for the entire board to basically roll up your sleeves, review some details that we'll bring forward for those properties, and you can have some just dialogue and discussion about where you would like us to go as far as strategizing potential uses. Dr. Hanson mentioned the bond portion of the study session. Again, this will be a working session for you. We'll give you some details on what typically are the activities that lead to bond election and the process. We'll whet your appetite with some categories of potential projects that you may consider, and then you can give us some direction from there. So looking forward to the study session, and hopefully this gives you some things to think about in advance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lewis. And I believe that's scheduled, if I remember right, for February the 17th, our second meeting in February. So, again, thank you to Dr. Lewis and Mrs. Carmody for their reports. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. We now move on to public input. Public input provides an opportunity for citizens to make suggestions, identify concerns, and request information on items not on the agenda. And tonight we have 3 people who would like to speak. You are limited to 3 minutes or less. Let's begin tonight with Morris Mendoza. It's always a pleasure.
I was thinking since it's Tuesday, it's a city council meeting. I'm going to joke about that. Okay. Members of the school board, President Alabi, and Superintendent Hanson. My name is Morris Mendoza, and I stand before you to just a few minutes to acknowledge, or in this case, report about some of our members of our Riverside School District for their involvement in our Casablanca neighborhood. First is Colonel McPeters of Arlington High, who became a member of our VFW post. Another is Raquel Mendoza. She's not related, but I would be proud if she was, of Madison Elementary School, who became a member of our Casablanca Home Enabling Service. And also Mr. Drew of Ramona High School, performing arts teacher, who, for his leadership in the Dia de los Artes in our community, which took place last year. Also Sergeant Johnny Hillary of Arlington High and James Luna of Madison Elementary, who received Post 184 Teacher of the Year awards. And also a special thanks to the 4 Ramona students who participated and whose names I do not know because I didn't write them down, who received our own Post Award for the Voice of Democracy. We're very proud of those students that participated. I am also glad to see that busing of students to our library taking place, And last, but still remembered, to Mr. Mike Fine for his kind leadership in guiding us to a new partnership with our school district. We haven't forgotten you, Mr. Fine. We appreciate you a lot. There's so many other things I could, report on, but these are just a few. And the one area of concern I do, maybe some of you have read it in the paper about state's guidance counselor shortages, the worst in the U.S. I don't know what it's for a school district, but I think that was part of our partnership goals with Money's Got, that we get more counselors. So I hope that you're working on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mendoza. We are indeed working on that. We have increased our counselors this year, so we're very proud of that. Now we will hear from Ashley Lopez, who will speak on special ed.
Good evening. I'm a mother of an amazing 4th grader in RUSD. He has attended Mark Twain Elementary School since kindergarten. Mark Twain is a great school which puts on Christmas performances, spring plays, and lots of award ceremonies for those students in general ed. For students like my son who are in special day class, none of those same opportunities are made available for him. For example, even though he participates and has paid to be in the 100-mile club, his class did not participate in the kickoff party. Last year, in his K through 3rd class, another kindergarten mom called the office after seeing dates about the kinder songs for promotion, only to be informed that promotion ceremony is only for general ed kindergartens. She was told that her son would not be participating in any form of promotional kindergarten event. I, like other moms of special ed children, are heartbroken when we walk out of the school seeing everyone lined up for various celebratory events that our children are excluded from. Last year, my son's program specialist said she encourages special ed teachers to participate in these events. Then I had a conversation with the principal about how exclusion of special ed children was and told that participating in such events was determined by the teacher. I couldn't help but feel this was discriminatory practice. General ed teachers do not have the option to not participate in the celebratory and motivational student events. I brought this issue to the Community Advisory Committee, where I was told this is not a special ed issue, but it was a site principal decision. So in September, I emailed my principal again, asking what can be done. At the very least, I feel strongly that teachers and administration at Twain should let special day class population participate in the award ceremonies. They should treat these children as if they matter and if their education has equal value as their peers. The principal emailed me back and said she would try to find a way to include special ed. It is now January and not one student in my son's class has received anything. So once again, I raised my concern at the CAC meeting and explained how clearly felt this was discrimination. Carrie Antrim, the assistant SOPA director, and I talked about this issue. She informed me that the principal would call me. That did not happen. Carrie informed me that my next step would be to go talk to Dr. Antonio Garcia. I am asking for equality, a simple piece of paper that says good job. This is just one small example of how much runaround special ed parents like myself get when we ask questions and try to fix injustices that lurk within RUSD. After 2 years of discussing and talking to 3 people in administration at RUSD, the students have not received anything. I feel I am being set in circles and nothing is being done to resolve the issue. Instead of calling a 4th person in administration, I'm coming to this board in hope that this can be resolved. The 2-year battle has been a harsh reality that my student is not valued as a student in this district. If I'm able to finally bring some equality to Twain special day children, it will be bittersweet knowing what a battle it took just to get him an award. But I will be happy because I know he deserves recognition. In closing, I'm asking the board to please help me to end this inequality and help me make this happen for all kids in RUSD. Some schools in RUSD do a great job at including all students. I just don't think it should be a choice of a principal or teacher to put these practices into place that discriminate against populations within a school site. My son Andrew is different, but he is not less.
Thank you very much. Dr. Hanson, could you advise somebody to speak to Mrs. Lopez about this issue? Okay, please. We will be following up with you, and I promise that. And now we'd like to hear from Steve Davey. And this is about Grow Riverside, which we support very much.
Good evening. I am a resident of Chino Hills, but the reason I'm here today is because of the marvelous work that your city has decided to take on in the Grow Riverside program and the Food Systems Alliance that we're building to create a local economy that where by the citizens of Riverside, for the citizens of Riverside, we can create and maintain a heritage that may not remain in citrus, but will remain in agriculture. Through the advances of technology and working with UCR, Cal Poly, and Cal Baptist, and I just stopped by Riverside City College, and I didn't have time to go talk to, I think it's Chef Bobby, that's starting the Culinary Institute there. And what we can do with controlled environmental agriculture or sustainable urban farming is something amazing. We have the ability to create over $1 million of food per acre in some of these advanced greenhouses. And that is before we start going vertical or using energy and LED lights and other things to grow food. And it's just an amazing opportunity to create a product that is grown here, the jobs are here, it's consumed here, the waste and the food waste can be regenerated back in the topsoil and bioenergy. And so you have a closed loop or regenerative farming concept that can go very far with teaching children's schools, which I think I see the city of California and a lot of educational departments moving toward, pathways for prosperity, linked learning, which I was engaged by Gary Thomas, who I think just retired at San Bernardino County. But in working with Riverside, I'm very impressed with your forward thinking. And I'm here with I formed a nonprofit called Our Foods, one word. and the Treasury accepted that this May. And we're going to go forward to look at farming and working with private landowners, possibly some excess lands the city and other agencies have, to work with that and create skill building, a biology that we can teach you, but you can also take home and put in your salad. And that growth, that internal growth from inside, could be so powerful and so lovely for the families and the children. And I would just like to know more how to work with you, and I'll continue to come and visit with you and the Grow Riverside program. And our next Food Alliance meeting is Thursday morning at the park up on Market Street. But I'd like to stay in touch and see what we can do to work with your community, the educational community, to just build a better city. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and I will pass your name and number along.
Thank you. Can I thank Fred?
I think you put it on the card, right? I think we have. Very good. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
And as a reminder, we're sorry that we can't engage in discussion with people that speak to public input because it's not on the agenda, but we will address those issues. And now on to district employee group reports. Our first is the RASM presentation. Mr. Bernie Moraz, President of the Riverside Association of School Managers.
Good evening, President Alavi, Dr. Hanson, members of the board. I want to thank you for this opportunity to give you a RASM report, but first I'd like to introduce the RASM board. President-elect Victor Cisneros, Treasurer Rebecca Brown, Secretary Elizabeth Watanabe, VP of Programs Katie Grimble, VP of Membership, we have two, Tracy Arner, Michelle Cortez, Vice President of Legislative Action, Gary Reller, Orrin Williams, and past President DeEtte Allard. RASM is the local charter for Access Region 19. We provide events for our members to make connections, build relationships, and keep us informed on topics of education. We continue to support students through scholarship distribution. Our main focus this year is fundraising. This year we've had one fundraiser already. It was a Managers on the Move theme, a fitness challenge where participants recorded their weekly log in a shared Google Doc. We gave away prizes for the top 5 participants. The top 5 participants logged in over 3,300 miles. Coming up in February, we're going to have another fitness challenge, only we're going to have different categories for cycling, jogging, and walking. Our final fundraiser is designed to support the arts. Our theme will be Building Arts Builds Our Future. We'll be selling pieces of artwork that symbolize Riverside. We're still working out the details. One of our objectives is to increase presence and visibility of RASM and RUSD employees within the county and through AXA. AXA Region 19 Council representatives from RUSD include Secondary Ed Council Michael Rowe, Urban Education Committee Judy Paredes, Co-Administrator Committee DeEtte Allard. Our Vice President of Legislative Action, Gary Reller, will be attending state-level Legislative Action Day in March. And then finally, I'd like to recognize our nominations for AXA's Managers of the Year or Administrators of the Year. We had 8 nominated: Secondary Principal Daryl Hanson, Middle School Principal Stephen Ibarra, Elementary Principal Shani Dahl, Secondary Co-Administrator Lana Goffman, Human Resource Administrator Susan Mills, Special Education Administrator Cindy Hartshorn, Central Administrator Daniel Patterson, and Technology Administrator Tracy Arner. We just got the news today. We are so pleased to announce that we had 2 winners from RUSD as Administrator of the Year in AXA's Region 19, and I'd like to share those 2 names with you. Human Resource Administrator Susan Mills, and Middle School Principal Stephen Ibarra. That concludes my report. We're so excited for supporting Dr. Hansen and the school board. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. That's good news. Now we will hear an RCTA presentation by Mr. Tim Martin, President of the Riverside City Teachers Association.
Good evening, President Alavi, Dr. Hansen, and members of the board. As you know, earlier in the fall, a joint RUSD-RCTA survey was conducted on the implementation of Common Core and on how different district and school programs and initiatives are impacting the conditions of teaching and learning. I have learned some lessons from the survey results, the process of designing the survey, and the response to the results of the survey as it has unfolded over the last several weeks. There were over 24 programs and resources that are used throughout the district and at school sites included in the survey, ranging from AVID to dual language immersion, Guru to Haiku, personalized learning to core knowledge, and much more. What do all of these programs and resources included in the survey and others not included in the survey have in common? The effectiveness of this vast array of resources and programs is determined in large part by our teachers. Valuable resources that support instruction and thoughtful programs that encourage student learning will always be made better by the work of our teachers. It was clear from the survey results that some resources, practices, and programs being used at school sites or district-wide are not all seen as effective and valuable. The second lesson for me is found in the 38 pages of comments. Those 38 pages are full of professional insight offered by teachers concerning the instructional programs in our schools and how they impact student learning. Comments were both very specific and detailed about subtle nuances of programs and resources, while also addressing the big picture of curriculum, implementation, and the nature of student learning. Those comments reflect the widespread expertise of teachers. A third impression that I gleaned from the survey comments is the depth of teacher investment. Frustrations were expressed, concerns were communicated, multiple ideas and suggestions for improvement were offered, but all the thoughts were infused with obvious commitment to doing the very best for our students. All of us know that at every school there are caring and professional teachers who are instructional and curriculum experts, experience daily what resources and programs are beneficial in the classroom, and who are invested deeply in our students. We should listen very carefully to what they have to say. When I first started in this role as president of RCTA, I shared with the board then the importance of professional parity between management and teachers at both the district level and at school sites. What was true then is still true today. Regular communication about the importance of cooperation and collaboration between managers and teachers cannot replace the substance of authentic professional equality. Genuine professional parity means that teachers and managers work as equals in the evaluation of our resources and the implementation of our programs. True professional parity is sincere, the dialogue relevant, meaningful, and timely, and teachers' voices are influential in establishing, shaping, and adjusting the practices and programs meant for our students. Why is this so important? That would be akin to questioning the value of an architect working closely with a general contractor in a building project. That building needs nothing less than the professional expertise and collaboration of both. Few of us would believe that the best structure can be built with anything less. True and genuine professional parity supports Kids First. Anything less, I think, is a disservice to them and to all of us. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. All right, we have come to the consent calendar. All the items listed under the consent calendar are considered by the board to be routine and will be enacted by the board in one motion unless we choose to pull items for specific.
I'd move to approve.
Thank you, but I was going to pull an item.
Okay.
And I know that Mrs. Cloud would also like to pull an item. Mrs. Cloud?
I would like to pull item F15, please.
F15. And I would like to pull item F10.
I would move approval with the exceptions of items F10 and F15.
Thank you. And Mr. Hunt seconds. Thank you very much. We will vote on that. All those in favor of those items? All right. Thank you very much. Now we will consider F10. Gloria Cowder, would you like to come up? I pulled F10 because this is a new report for us. On Friday, Mr. Lee and I attended the governance training at Riverside County Office of Education, where we were sort of told the standards that we were supposed to have as a board when evaluating the Head Start program. It was quite a lengthy list of things that we needed to look at. We were supposed to look at standards of conduct, major expenditures, HISKI results, program summaries, comprehensive services, enrollment, you name it. It was all on the list of things that we should be aware of. So I thought maybe you could just kind of go over the first report with us and kind of hit the highlights.
Sure.
That would be great.
Okay. Mrs. Alavey, Dr. Hanson, members of the board, you will be receiving monthly a Head Start progress report, and in that progress report there will be a number of items, and we learned on Friday again that we may need to adjust. We're reporting on some we don't need to report on, and we need to add some that we need to add based on regulations. But we will be reporting on the enrollment of students in Head Start. We will be reporting on the topics in our parent committee meetings. We will be reporting on the number of USDA meals that we serve, the number of the percentage of special education students that are served in our Head Start program, and we'll also be reporting given budget updates. So those are required. There's also numerous items that will come before you, the board, in action and also in consent, as far as the Head Start application, the policies of our parent council, and various reports throughout the year, either in the action or the consent. Mrs. Cloud has served on our governance committee for Head Start over the past couple of years, and I think we will continue that in addition to having reports to the board on a regular basis.
Okay. Mrs. Cloud, did you want to make any comment on that?
Well, I would just like to commend our staff. They've taken it since I've been serving in that capacity. From pretty amateur to pretty professional. And as I think I said before, I'd like to, go to a couple more meetings and then let Mr. Lee transition to be the board representative, because it's just a fascinating piece of RUSD that's not often highlighted, yet a very, very important part. And so I'm glad it's being highlighted. And Gloria Cowder and Joe do a tremendous job of serving our youngest students.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's really great. So I will entertain a motion for approval of F10.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hunt. All those in favor of accepting the Head Start report, please vote. And that does pass. Now we'll consider item F15. This is the Pupil Services Report.
Yes, it's the
yes
recommended action on it.
Maybe we can invite Tim Walker
yes,
to the
please.
pulpit and talk about what this item is, and then I know Mrs. Cloud, I believe, has a question or two.
Ms. Cloud,
Members of the board, Dr. Hanson, this item before you is a recommendation for action to be taken by the Board of Education on issues brought forward for expulsion, suspended expulsion, readmission, denial of readmission, and other similar actions that will be presented for students who have either been expelled or are up for reentry into the school district.
And as you know, my concern after reviewing the reports for several months, especially highlighted this month, is how many students are on this list for marijuana use and alcohol use to a much lesser degree, excluding many other activities that we've seen in the past. So my question and concern really is this an uptick in usage of our students, general population, or is this an anomaly, and what are we doing about it?
Well, to answer your question, we did see a similar pattern of increased number of 48900C violations. That would be a controlled substance use. In this particular board agenda, 4 of the 5 expulsion recommendations and all of the suspended expulsions have to do with marijuana use. Although we have had an ongoing decrease in the number of expulsions for the last 4 years in the Riverside Unified School District, something we're very proud of, we have seen an increase in the concentration of those expulsions being second violations of 48900C and a pattern of increased use of marijuana on the campuses resulting in those expulsions or suspended expulsions. Having noticed this pattern right before the holidays, we have contacted our outside counseling services, and they will be increasing their individual counseling that's required for any first offenders, as well as doing some assemblies and some work at the sites to do some interventions related to the dangers inherent with the use of street drugs, alcohol, and prescription medications. We hope to have that in place in short order and to have those done at the middle and high school level.
Well, I'm glad you're aware of the trend, and I hope that you'll report back to us how the interventions are working.
I'll be happy to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. And with that, I would make a motion to approve item E15.
Very good.
F15.
And Mr. Hunt, did you second? No. Oh, okay.
Thank you, Mrs. Clapp.
Wait, do I hear a second? I'll second. All right. Thank you for purposes of discussion.
Thank you, Ms. Elf. Thank you, Ms. Clapp, for pulling this. Director Walker, I just wondered if you would do us a favor and just look back when you get the time. When Riverside, about a year, might be about 2 years ago now, they banned marijuana shops here in Riverside. And I remember our book was just filled with these. I just would like to see if there's a difference. And I think you may want to advise the superintendent on whether the board should take any position, if this, because the city is beginning to look at this again, allowing the shops back or under threat of litigation. And I just would like to ask, because you're in those meetings with those young kids, or you and your staff are, what the heck are they thinking? I'm just wondering, I was a kid once too. I just didn't do it when I went to school. Why? They're going to school stoned. And did they ever explain the reason why they're doing this? Is to escape, or just they're idiots, or what?
Well, certainly I wouldn't take a position on their being anything except for underinformed. The majority of students that I have been involved with in regard to either sitting in on administrative hearing panels or doing perks myself or sitting in on perks during training, the students, the proliferation of marijuana and its common use throughout the community appears to be along the lines of tobacco use back when I was in high school. And tobacco was an expellable offense at that point in time. It resulted at one point, and I've had this conversation, with squares being put on grass and you had to smoke in that area. And certainly I'm not advocating for marijuana to be smoked at school at all. I think it's an educational issue. I think it's one that the use is so common that students believe that it's no big deal. it's our job to let them know that although the California legislature has decreased the penalty associated with possession of marijuana, simple possession now is a misdemeanor, that having it on the campus is still federally against the rules associated with schools. And I think some of them have pulled out their prescription marijuana card and think that's a get-out-of-jail-free card, and it is not. So again, it comes down to bringing up to the attention of parents and students that the use of controlled substances at school, when you're coming to school, if you're using it at a school activity or event, is against the rules, and it has a high penalty for the second use in our school systems. I think one of the things that you'll find is the parents understand in many of these cases because they will agree to a suspended expulsion, and not many of them actually go to full hearings where the students are defending their actions.
So you think we perhaps should make a stronger statement as young people come into the secondary level that this is very serious? You think some are just ignorant of the California Ed Code and our rules?
I believe that we need to, and it's our effort for the coming school year, to have proactive assemblies at the beginning of the year to not only have it in our student handbooks and to advocate for and to counsel students on the potential hazards and dangers of use of controlled substances, but also to let them know the ramifications for their education. You're out of school for the rest of a semester and all the next semester if you are a user or if you're in possession for a second offense. And if you sell it, you're out for a full year. And that certainly has impacts on students' ability to graduate and to participate in the offerings of the Riverside Unified School District.
Well, I would suggest it's Dr. Hanson and Ms. Carmen Day's call, but I would suggest that as young people enter the secondary, whatever we need to do visually, orientation-wise, whatever we need to do, get it across to them, no excuses. And just without naming names, one of the people we expelled had a mason jar of, I remember, 9 baggies. I don't know what a baggie is anymore, but isn't that more of an offense? Isn't that a dealership type of?
Yeah, unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess, depending on the side that you're on, possession is possession, and it's not an amount when it comes to an offense within the school system. It is relevant for a criminal offense, and because all of these involve the police on our campuses, the police make a determination of whether or not there'll be a criminal offense associated with the amount of marijuana that the student's in possession with. In that particular case that you're describing, that actually was determined to be sale, and the student involved was both in possession of and charged with selling, so the penalty was larger.
And lastly, not to belabor, but I didn't realize, can people under the age of 18 get a California marijuana medical card?
Yes.
Oh, things have changed since my day. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr.
Yes, indeed.
Any other questions? Thank you.
We have a motion and a second to accept item F15, and we'll go ahead and vote on that now. That motion passes. Thank you. There's been a request for a short break. I'm going to recess this meeting until 7:05.
These things are addictive. They're nasty. They're addictive.
Yeah, I know Kathy. I've known her for a while. It's been, yeah, I haven't talked to her on the phone, but I think Kathy's coming to Saturday.
Kathy, this is Carrie. I think you met her before.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been around. I went to school with Tom, so.
Hey, how are you doing? Congratulations.
Thank you. It's going to be interesting year. Yeah, it's been 28 years in the classroom, so it'll be different, but it'll be fun. So, challenges. Yeah. Are we nice?
Would you like to have coffee sometime? We could,
if you'll have I was so stoked about it. That was really good news.
Or you can send me some pictures. Okay, I can do that. She sent me that last night, which is nice. Five.
Because Amy's having
Ours was tougher. I mean, she's still not easy, but that's not good. All my sisters. Everything my dad. I woke up at 6 a.m. Why'd you have all those guns? It was fun. I think they're good too. Like I was worried about we've been there before, so it was a new place. Third world, no hospital, 3 kids.
Remember the little guy that used to be in the square? I went to high school with my dad and her dad.
Oh, that was just
her dad grew that and got 15 bucks. Never claimed it. They used it for years.
What happened to him?
Well, remember, I don't know if you might be too young, but it used to be when you went.
All right, I'm going to call the meeting back to order.
You know where the shooting gallery is? Disney? They had a thing you put it in a quarter or something. You could people in a bag would kind of go up this mountain and come down the side. When he first opened, there's a lot of markets.
The first order of business is that I unfortunately made an omission during my report of the closed session. And I also should have reported out that for item of public employee discipline, dismissal, release pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, where an employee has appealed to the board, we have voted to have an outside hearing officer hear that appeal. And I should have reported that out, and I am sorry I missed that. So now we will go on to our next item of business, which is our report and discussion of the governor's budget proposals for 2015-16. Mr. Fine.
Thank you. Good evening, Mrs. Salovey and Dr. Hanson and members of the board. This is going to be a fairly short report on the governor's proposals for the next fiscal year that begins July 1st. As I've shared with many folks, this is kind of the driest, most boring budget that we've had in a long time. I guess the one highlight is that it at least doesn't have cuts in it, because we've had some exciting budgets in the past, but they were filled with cuts. So I guess we'll take boring as long as it doesn't have cuts in it. But just some background with respect to the fundamentals of Proposition 98. I think the board's well versed in this. Proposition 98 is a subset of the total state budget and really deals with K-14. So our K-12 public schools and our community colleges are the pot of money that the state makes available to them to fund their programs is governed by all the very complex formulas in Proposition 98. It's made up of not only state general fund, but of local property tax revenues that go to schools as well. The governor has proposed a $113 billion state budget for next fiscal year. It is a fairly modest increase over the current level of spending of only 1.4%. The governor continues to call for fiscal restraint and prudence with respect to spending levels because he knows that he's very dependent right now. The state budget's very dependent on Proposition 30 temporary taxes that begin to expire in our forecast window of 18 months. And so he's really asking for continued restraint, even though when we look at lots of numbers, we see fairly dramatic increases in state revenue. But he reminds everybody that many of those are being driven by these temporary taxes. With respect to the Proposition 2 Rainy Day Fund, and this is Proposition 2 that was just passed by the voters last November. You know that there are actually two rainy day funds related to this. One, a state rainy day fund. The governor does propose putting $2.8 billion into that fund. There's another rainy day fund that comes out of this legislation or this Proposition 2 that deals specifically with Prop 98. It's the one we're concerned about because once it's triggered, then there is in essence a cap on our local reserves. The state continues to say that that will not be triggered during the forecast period, but in fact, if you get deep into the numbers, we are very close to triggering the Prop 98 Rainy Day Fund, which would then impose what we've all described as very bad public policy that was enacted last June by the legislature with regard to limiting local school district reserves. We have actually met several of the trigger points already, and so one of the things the governor does acknowledge, he acknowledges in the budget and he acknowledged during his press conference on the budget that that's a decision that he is very open to going back and having another discussion about, not committing to reversing it, but simply to continue the dialogue. And as the board knows, we've been part of that dialogue really since day one. Specifically with Prop 98, governor is proposing a level of spending about $65.7 billion. That does include the local property tax component. That's an increase of just under $8 billion. However, a significant portion of that, over almost $3 billion, is considered one-time versus ongoing. And as the board is well aware, the programs that we need to operate for our kids generally come in that we want to do them not only just once, but we want to do it on a continued basis. So recurring funding is critically important to us, but a big percentage of next year's spending plan actually includes some one-time funds.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, yes. Mr. Hunt?
Just, can you explain, Mike, what he's thinking with the one-time? How would you categorize those one-times?
So a large piece of this one-time are actually what we used to call Proposition 98 settle-up funds. They are actually from prior years. Last year, this year, actually it goes back 3 years. So 2 years ago, last year, and this year, where in essence he built a state budget on lower than actual revenue levels. And under Prop 98, the state ultimately has to pay us whatever, once they close, the state closes the books, whatever that revenue number is and the Prop 98 formulas generate for schools, the governor has to go back and ultimately give us those funds. But if they're from 2 years ago or 1 year ago, or even from this year, they are considered one-time in nature because on an ongoing basis, they're supposed to be taking that into consideration. And so this year alone, for example, the governor and the legislature adopted a budget in June using lower revenue levels than what we all believed were there. And in fact, at this point, it's about $3 billion lower. And in part, he's doing this not because he or the Department of Finance don't know what they're doing with regard to forecasting revenues, but they're doing this in essence to force these large one-time elements so that when Prop 30 temporary taxes begin to disappear in 24 months, there will not be an impact on schools in their ongoing programs. What we will lose at that point are these one-time types of things. So in some respects, this is a strategy to force the legislature into being prudent about separating recurring program commitments from one-time program commitments. It's his strategy to do that. Whether that's a trust issue with the legislature that they can't do it on their own, and actually that's probably well deserved. We've seen them not do that on their own. So in part, this is a strategy of the governor's. Get them to adopt a budget with lower revenue forecasts and what he truly believes will come in, and then treat that true up in a later year as one time. The other piece that's going on here is there's a significant increase in capital gains. So as the stock market continues to strengthen or continues its strong position, and our high earners, our 1%ers basically take their capital gains, that is one time. And you'll remember, go back a decade, it was spend those capital gains on recurring programs is what got us into the trouble that had to be corrected over the last 6 years when the stock market, when capital gains stopped coming in, stopped materializing, and yet we were left with ongoing program needs. And so there's also a acknowledgement here that capital gains portion of personal income tax is actually growing faster than any other element of the state's tax structure. And he's trying to, Department of Finance is trying to caution against spending those one-time dollars on recurring programs. Remember that the rate of capital gains when it exceeds 8% is one of the triggers for the rainy day fund. And we're over that. It's one of the triggers that's already been met. Consistent with existing law, this was passed last June as part of the budget trailer bill for the current year, was an acknowledgement that the first $1 billion of extra money that comes into the state this year would first go to pay off the remaining $900 million of cash deferrals. And so that actually isn't about next year. That's the governor acknowledging that law exists. We're already over $3 billion, so we've triggered that first $1 billion, and that will trigger by June 30th the final payoff of cash deferrals. And so we're never going to get to zero because the state always owes schools at least current month dollars in arrears, but we will not be exposed any longer to those very large deferrals. You'll recall that during the height of those deferrals, about $80 million was withheld on an annual basis from RUSD. That's now in just single-digit numbers of millions, but by June 30th, we'll go to zero. So given those additional roughly $8 billion of new monies for Prop 98, where does the governor set his priorities for specifically K-12? Because remember, within Prop 98, it also includes our colleagues and partners at the community college level. The biggest single piece of that, half of it, $4 billion of recurring money, goes into continued implementation of the local control funding formula. The board will recall that when that was adopted 2 years ago, they set targets, the state set per student funding targets out that were at 2020-21, basically 8 years out. Those targets are equivalent to the 07-08 funding levels for schools. And basically what we're doing is when we started that process, we were here, the targets were here, the difference is what's called the gap. Pretty straightforward. And so now we refer to this as gap funding. How much each year is the state going to put into closing that gap towards that target that's 8 years out? So in the first year they closed 12% of the gap. The second year they closed 30% of the gap. For next year, the governor's proposing closing the gap by an additional 32%. So by the end of next year, we will be over 70% of the gap will have been closed. This is an acceleration over the original plan, and I think this is very important for us to keep in mind. This will continue to be a priority for the governor because the original plan to implement in 2021 is 2 years after Governor Brown leaves office, and I don't think he's going to leave full implementation to somebody else. This is a legacy issue for him. He's going to want to ensure that LCFF is fully implemented as he promised before he exits Sacramento for we think, the last time. The budget includes a cost of living adjustment, a small cost of living adjustment of 1.58%. That really only counts for RUSD and most school districts now on the remaining state categorical programs, which there's only a couple of. Specifically for us, that would include special education and the state's very small portion of nutrition programs, free and reduced lunch meal programs. The state, in part, using some of this one-time money that we've talked about, Governor proposes to use $1.1 billion of that one-time money towards paying down part of the wall of debt that is in the mandate reimbursements. And you'll know that RUSD is a long-time player in the state with regard to mandate reimbursements, a long-time leader in that arena. They owe us about $6 million. However, they are going to continue to pay it off on a per ADA basis of roughly $180. So the estimate for us is about $7.2 million, which would completely wipe away the state's debt to RUSD on this topic. We can use that for any purpose, local purpose, one-time purpose that the board determines, and a suggestion by the state is that this in essence count as the next round of funding for Common Core implementation. You know that we have appealed to the state to say you've probably only funded implementation of the Common Core by about a third. We need about 3 times what you've given us. The governor's response to that will be, well, I've given you roughly another third of what you said it's going to cost you through this means, but it's going to count towards the reduction of debt at the same time. There are some constitutional issues with this. I think the school community is going to have to decide whether they fight over this or not. Counting it both ways is not really consistent with the intent of the law. Counting it as debt reduction and counting it towards program augmentation. The last note on here, something that you're very familiar with, and that's our continued investment from Prop 39 in energy efficient funding. The $368 million is just slightly above the level of funding being provided this year, and so RUSD is well positioned to get its share of that continued money. 2 new programs, neither of which are surprises to us. One's been discussed for 2 years, and the other is really an outcome of the last 2 years of investments by the legislature in career technical ed. Both of these, as you'll note by the subheading, the governor is starting almost to move these out of the education dialogue and into the workforce development dialogue. He actually includes both of these proposals 2 times in his budget, once under education and once under workforce development, as a way of saying these are critical to the state's continued economic recovery and the preparation of our workforce for jobs in the future. The first is Adult Education Block Grant, an investment of $500 million on an ongoing basis per year to enact the plans that our local consortiums of adult ed programs have pulled together. So for Riverside, that's RCC, HARUPA, Alvord, Corona Norco, and ourselves are part of that. They've spent the last 2 years meeting, and we've spent the last 2 years meeting, developing plans, and ultimately the state's intent is to fund the consortia. Not to fund the local community college or the local school district, but to fund the consortia. Those consortiums will need to, or consortiums will need to put in place an allocation board who then will receive those funds and make determination of how much is given to each of the entities, RCC, RUSD, CNUSD, JUSD, etc., and which programs each district or community college will deliver. The exception is in year one. Yes.
Mrs. Cloud had a question. This is the topic I have a question about, so maybe you could answer it. I'd like to know what the adult ed decision means specifically to RUSD, if you have some ballpark. And the other part of that is, I thought that we're looking at doing some creative credentialing for CTE and the mail out. How does that play out? Because the kind of thing that people would be surprised what counts as CT, career technical education. Sometimes it doesn't seem like real, because we think of it like mechanics, computers, those kinds of hands-on real things. And some of the things the state is funding is really not in that vein. So we need a vision of how to offer those real hands-on things that people think of as CTE, where they're crying in the fields for electricians and plumbers and on and on. So, what's the vision here?
So I'll be happy to answer that. With respect to the impact on RUSD, that's actually the second bullet here under adult ed. In the first year, so I just spoke about how the funds will be allocated out to the various consortia, and then they'll have a local allocation board. That's for year 2 and on. So the exception to that is in year 1. And year 1 is seen as a transition year. The governor proposes that those monies will go to districts following their maintenance of effort requirements. So for RUSD, that's $2.3 million next year into its adult education block grant. That is our current maintenance of effort requirement. For a district, say, next to us that has a very low maintenance of effort, $100,000, they'll only get $100,000 in the first year. So RUSD is well positioned if this particular provision of the proposal stays. This will be a hotly debated provision of this proposal because it will be viewed as somewhat unfair, but you'll remember me standing here many times talking about how I viewed 2 years ago when they pulled the rug out from under adult ed. The way they did that was also unfair, was specifically unfair to us in that we had an ongoing obligation of $2.3 million where our neighbors may have had an ongoing obligation of $100,000. For the first year, it kind of reverses that and acknowledges that things weren't equal 2 years ago, so in the first year of the new program, they also won't be equal to help make up isn't the right word because it's a fraction of the impact. So that's on adult ed.
So basically, we have a year to do the same sort of things we're doing. That's what I mean. Is that, or
so on adult ed, we're part of a consortium, and they will determine which programs Riverside will deliver versus Alvord versus Rupa versus RCC.
Thanks for that.
And then going forward, based on that plan, that's what they will allocate funds to. But in the first year, in that transition year, the funding will come directly to, in our case, RUSD, and be at the MOE, as proposed right now at the MOE level.
We have little control as an individual. We're a part of it.
We have a seat at the table.
Yeah.
Going forward, we have a seat at the table with our partners.
Right. Okay, get it.
With respect to career technical ed, and I'll address several pieces of your question, Mrs. Cloud. Recall that there's been 2 years of investment by the state, $250 million in each of the years, in Link Learning or Career Trust grants. They are competitive grants. Former Senator Darrell Steinberg put those in place as part of a deal 2 years ago, and we've had 2 years of funding. The current year, this year, which is the second year, those grant applications haven't been filed yet. We're coming up on that deadline, and we'll know. In the first year, RUSD, both as an individual district and as part of a different consortia, did not receive any grants. This is a little bit different. This is one-time money for 3 years, $250 million each year, so $750 million in total. It is not they are competitive grants, but they aren't intended to cover 100% of the cost. They're intended to only cover 50% of the cost of the startup of new career technical education programs. So they require a dollar for dollar match, where the trust grants of the last 2 years don't require any match. The governor says basically about this is they recognize that getting quality career technical education programs off the ground are very resource intensive, is the actual words he used. I put them here on the slide. And so this is intended to help with some of those one-time startup costs. That's what's in this proposal. Now let me go to Mrs. Cloud's questions, which are directly related to the budget itself. The first had to do with, and these all kind of tie together, the first has to do with new credential requirements from the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. For CTE programs, there are new requirements coming out. We've all kind of stood back and laughed at this. The state's making billions of dollars of investment in CTE, why CTC, the California Teaching Commission's coming along at the same time and putting all these new requirements in place seems a little disjointed, because for many of our CTE teachers, they can't meet the new requirements. They require not only an education background, but they also require a workplace background. And so if you take a high quality health program, medical program teacher at Ramona High School, her career's been teaching. She knows exactly what she's teaching by way of curriculum, and as an expert, I would gladly take an EMT course from her and feel like I was well served, right? But she's not going to qualify for that new credential because she doesn't have that work experience in the field. And so we have to work through those kinds of issues. ROP is in the same situation. So regional occupational program teachers, many of them have very unique credentials. In some cases, we can't even offer employment for that teacher with that credential. And so for ROP, which you know was moved, is basically being phased from our county offices back to the school districts from a funding perspective. We have met with RCOE, and they have, I think, been very, very fair about the phasing out. So they're losing that money, and we're gaining the money over 8 years. They're losing it almost immediately, but we gain that money over the 8 years implementation of LCFF. They're going to begin next year a 3-year phase of us being responsible to pay for the ROP classes that we have in our high schools. And so we'll pay for 1/3 of the cost next year. They'll pay for 2/3, then 2/3, then 0, basically, and it'll come to us. In many cases, we're not going to want to hire those long-standing ROP teachers in our schools. We want them to stay employees of RCOE. We will contract with RCOE for those services. And today we contract on a year-to-year basis. In the future, they would like us to contract on a 3-year commitment. So we'd make a 3-year commitment to have Julie Jameson remain at King High School teaching sports medicine. Julie teaches a whole array of sports medicine related items. Today we do that on a year-to-year basis. They pay for it. Tomorrow we'll receive the funding for that, we'll pay for it, and we'll make that commitment on a 3-year basis. But the credentialing issues, if there was one associated to Julie in my example, would be RCOEs to deal with, not RUSDs. So for that fee, they'll give us the teacher and the curriculum, but we will be responsible for equipment, for the classroom costs, for supplies of the program. And actually, Riverside County as a whole is well positioned in the LCFF in this regard. When fully implemented, I believe the number is $26 million. Our county school districts, 23 school districts, will receive about $26 million for what used to be ROP programs, where the ROP program up to this point, paid for by the county, it's been about a $16.5 million program. So there's a $9.5 million growth in the program countywide. Now that means some other county in the state isn't faring as well, and that's fine, but Riverside County is a winner in that particular aspect of LCFF.
Mr. Lee, you had a question?
Yeah. What defines a forward-thinking program and partnership? And second part to my question is, the grants that we've applied for over the last 2 years that we've been unable to get, do they contain what you would consider forward-thinking programs that we can try to jumpstart?
So that was actually Mrs. Cloud's last question about what kind of programs are we putting in place? Are they to train plumbers and electricians and so on? The answer to that is no, because the forward-thinking requirements are related to level of pay, and so the state needs to view these as high-paying. Now, plumbers and electricians, I think those of us that have recently hired plumbers and electricians know that we think of them as high-paid. Certainly the bill that I just got for a pipe repair at home was, I thought the plumber was well-paid. But they need to be related to the local job market. So, for example, we were talking before the meeting, logistics is a area of growth in our region. Advanced manufacturing is an area of growth in our region. You'll recall that we submitted a CTE grant application for aviation at Arlington High School in partnership with Chaffee Community College and Cal Baptist. At first, the county in fact told us you can't submit that. And I went to them and it says who? You're not in charge of this. And show me where aviation is not a growth industry in our region. And in fact, we had all the statistical data to support our application. So we have to be able to support it by way of job orientation and growth in our local community. It has to be what the state calls high pay, which we would all be surprised at what that level of pay is. It's not substantial. It's not what most of us would describe as high pay, I guess would be the fair way to say it. So we can't just pick and choose which industries we want to train folks for or offer programs for. They need to be supported by our local economy.
So, for instance, does it have to be new? So would the aviation program at Arlington be something that could be funded by way of this grant?
Yes.
Okay.
So I want to back up. This particular incentive grant, the startup costs, we believe, we haven't seen the trailer bill language for this yet, so we're not sure about all the details, but certainly the startup costs, or the ongoing component of the program, would be from the trust, CTE trust grants that we still have another opportunity to receive, or from our own investment in LCAP, because as you'll recall specifically, we included 2 new pathways in CTE pathways in the LCAP. So this would help us with the startup costs of an aircraft engine or what those kinds of high-priced types of things we'd want to put in place. And Mrs. Codd, does that answer each of yours? Or?
Well, it just baffles my mind why some of these that we all know are high-paying tech positions are not included in some of this. It is baffling.
The last thing I wanted to touch on is actually an incomplete proposal in my mind from the governor and for political reasons. The governor signaled 2 years ago in his state budget that he desired the state to exit from funding school facilities, new construction, modernization across California. Simply that it was no longer sustainable to issue billions of dollars of state school bonds and pay that debt service, that it just simply became unsustainable for the state. Currently, the debt service, about $2 billion a year to support the prior bonds, is paid for out of non-Prop 98 funds, out of the non-prop side of the budget. Governor desires to have a program that is a pay-as-you-go program, as opposed to this idea that you'd get millions of dollars to go build a project or modernize a project. Governor has spent months with stakeholders and with a small group of advisors and others. I've had the opportunity to participate in those discussions. First off, we, I think, made a lot of progress in convincing his staff that he can't completely exit paying for local school facilities because that's a constitutional problem. You're all familiar with Serrano versus Priest, which is the 1971 very famous court case that brought us revenue limits so that there was equity among school districts. The same issue would exist on facility side as it does on the educational or on the funding of education. And so the governor's acknowledged that the state must continue to participate at least with some districts. What's in the governor's budget are a list of reforms, but no money. And I have seen an outline of a proposal that includes money. And it's my understanding that that may have just been pulled out and be part of a later discussion between now and June to be introduced by the administration. But what we know from the list of reforms is that they follow the LCFF tenets fairly closely. Number one, enhanced local control and flexibility, and we can all debate whether we've really seen that with LCFF or not. And two, targeting resources based on need, areas of need. So the first thing the governor proposes is to index what we commonly refer to as the Proposition 39 tax caps. So if we pass a Proposition 39 bond, which we did in 2001, Measure B, there is a limit on the amount of tax that we can levy for a unified school district. That's $60 per 100,000 of assessed value. So that limits the amount of money that our voters can consider supporting us with. Argued to have the tax cap completely removed. If you want real local flexibility, then let your local voters decide what they're willing to pay and not. Some communities may be willing to pay 40 per 100,000. Some communities may be willing to pay 120 per 100,000. Let them decide through the election process of your school bond, not through some artificial cap by the state. What the governor proposes is to leave the cap in place, but to go back to its inception in 2001 and index it to inflation. So retroactively index it. So I haven't done the calculation, but it would bring that $60 cap up right now to somewhere probably just shy of $80 or so, and then going forward. That buys a little bit of additional headroom for a local community to support school needs, but not the kind of dramatic change that I think we were advocating for. Second thing the governor proposes is to reform developer fees and come up with one fee. Today we have 3 fees, level 1, level 2, level 3. Come up with one fee that would be somewhere between above level 2 but below level 3. Remember that level 3 is the full cost of mitigation. Level 2 is somewhere quite a bit actually less than the full cost of mitigation. Third is to give us complete flexibility towards bigger facility projects with regard to routine restricted maintenance. Today we're required to set a portion of our general fund aside each year for our routine restricted maintenance activities. That predominantly goes to maintenance and operations and supports the budget with respect to trades. So carpenters, electricians, plumbers on our staff. Their salaries are paid for from routine restricted maintenance. The materials they buy are paid for that way. The governor proposes to give us flexibility and allow that money to carry over, which is interesting because he wants to also restrict our reserves. So we have a little inconsistency here. But to pool those funds and carry them over and save them up so that they could be used for new construction or modernization. It's not a whole lot of money here, so again, it doesn't make a big dent in new construction or modernization, but it is a signal of flexibility. The last component, understanding that the state must stay as a partner with some school districts in the school facilities world, is to create a new metric called per pupil assessed valuations. We often don't think of assessed valuation on a per pupil basis because we're not funded in any way that way, but use that as a metric, as a way to measure a local community's ability to support its school facilities through local taxes. So a lower assessed value per student district would partner with the state would partner with them, and they would get some state aid towards their needs because the state recognizes they can't generate what they need locally. A higher per pupil assessed valuation metric, then the state would not participate, as an example. Everything would be funded locally, as an example. Again, this is an incomplete proposal. These only deal with the reforms in the program. They don't deal with a funding mechanism to replace a state bond. And when we talk about a state bond, we have to remember this is a focus on K-12, but state facility school bonds also fund community colleges, CSU, and UC facilities as well. So there's some unfinished business out there. The governor intends these proposals to be a prompt for continued dialogue in our K-12 community. Be happy to answer any additional questions
Mr.
that you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Allaby. Mr. Fine, on that last note, that last bullet point, what about a district like ours where, we're an old city area and we have a lot of disparity on social economics? I mean, we have areas that are relatively wealthy. We have areas that are considerably poor. How would we? Is there any look at that kind of blending? We're not a Rancho Cucamonga, I'm saying.
So, from the state's perspective, they're going to look at the school district as a whole. Yeah. They're not going to look at neighborhoods within the school district. They're going to look at the school district's assessed valuation as a whole. So, what is our total assessed valuation divided by our total number of students? That would be that metric I just described, and I don't know what the scale is going to look like about where the cutoff is to be below or above. I'm going to guess, purely based on the discussions I've been part of, we will be above that cutoff point, meaning Riverside would not be a district that the state would typically partner with to help fund our facilities. They would see us as having the ability to do that locally. We have demonstrated that already with Measure B and so on, and they would look to those kinds of experience, our community's willing, the experience of our community being willing to support us in the past. It does not equalize us from I'll use my friends in Newport, where that same, a district half our size has the ability to raise locally construction funds probably 10 times what we have, simply because of the difference in assessed valuation and applying the tax rate to that assessed valuation. So it does not try to equalize that. That gets back a little bit to the constitutional issues involved with Serrano. What the governor points to in this whole, number one, he wants to exit the state's responsibility. So that's the underlying concept here, right? But the other piece of it that he wants to ultimately get to is this idea of putting the burden clearly back on our local communities, and so without violating the constitutional issues. How you equalize a Newport and a Riverside in this arena, let's just say neither of us qualify for any state aid under what could be the new proposal. There's still a great disparity there. How that works out, we're going to have to simply wait and see what his proposal is. And then ultimately probably what the legal challenges are. The board, I think, is probably aware from just media coverage, there are already, I think there are 3, I may have miscounted, bills already introduced in the legislature for a school bond. And there's a proposition being proposed coming from the school construction community of architects and builders and school facility folks leading that effort. Governor's pretty clear he's not supportive of any of that. Does not want to enter into a new state bond at this point. Or the next eligible time would be 2016, in 2016.
Mr. Fine, I have a question. What I've been concerned about is the pension hole that is, I've heard that Governor Brown is going to require districts to pay into. I wondered if you had some insight on that.
Sure. So that's already begun. That began back on July 1. It was part of this year's state budget, both for PERS and STRS. Our STRS rate over the next 8 years will go up from 8.2% to 19.1%. Dollar impact on RUSD from that STRS rate increase is about $82 million when it's implemented over the 8 years. It will use, for a typical district, it will use up about 30% of the new revenue coming into that school district. Not quite sure how the state envisions we're going to implement our LCAP plans and other priorities. For next year, that number is about $4 million. So of the $26 million of additional funds we'll get, the first $4 million will go out in higher STRS and PERS rates. For STRS, there is a slight rate increase for their members as well, roughly 2 points. There are some legal reasons why the state cannot assess a higher rate on the STRS members, and that is based on the fact that you can only assess a higher rate on its members if there's an additional benefit given. And the state's used some technicalities to justify the 2 percentage point increase on its members. It's a huge issue for all of us because it is now set, that increase from 8.2 to 19.1 with no, I'm going to use the word no exceptions, no variances. Well, if our revenue falls off in 3 years, that rate increase is still there. And so there are several arguments going on across the state on how to deal with this. The one I think has the most ability to get some attention and some traction in Sacramento is somehow tie the two together, that if our revenue drops by more than a certain level, that STRS increase would be suspended for 1 year during that time, something like that, just to save the school districts and community colleges from that kind of a double whammy, if you will. So that's already in place, absolutely presenting a challenge. The second piece of all that, which is really unrelated to the state of California, but is a national standard, which Governmental Accounting Standards Board, statement number 68, goes into place this coming fiscal year, actually this fiscal year. Kevin is about to come up and talk to you about the audit, and when he's maybe done with that, I'll have him share with you the implementation of GASB 68. But basically what it does is it takes that unfunded liability that STRS and PERS are now carrying at the state level and breaks it down to every agency. And we will now have to account for that on our balance sheet. So for many school districts, their unfunded STRS liability that they don't even know what the number is, in this coming year will be reflected as a liability on their balance sheet, and it actually could put them in a negative equity position. It's not a budget issue. It's a presentation of your financial statements issue, but actually could put them into a negative equity position. So I don't know the number yet for RUSD. I do know that RUSD represents 0.36% of the unfunded liability, but the unfunded liability recently changed, and I haven't updated the calculation.
So this would have a pretty large impact on our LCAP.
On our balance sheet. Okay, two things.
I was just thinking.
GASB 68 will have an impact on our balance sheet, not on the budget. The STRS and PERS rate increases have a significant impact on our financial stability and ability to grow program.
Okay, very good. Mr. Lee.
Mrs. Alvey raises a good point. And I think it would be helpful, at least for me, and I don't know, maybe other members of the board, if we could get an executive summary of kind of just what you said, and not necessarily tomorrow or next week or next month, but as the information becomes more available, because it does sound like, and you've emphasized it in the past, it's going to really impact our financial stability, and also I think it's going to impact our employees, and I'd like to know how that's going to affect our employees now and in the future.
Certainly their net check, their check, the net of their paycheck is going to go down because they're going to have to contribute more to STRS for a certificated employee, and to a lesser degree for a classified employee. The PERS rate increases are a little less.
Right. Thank you.
Mrs. Cloud. I would just add, finish my conversation, is what is really happening is the state is giving us the conversation, making public the conversation, but we're the ones that really are, the impact meets the road here in our district. And so people are thinking that we're getting more money to impact more programs, et cetera, when the truth is, because of the way the funding is set up, we might not have more money for more programs as much as the public thinks we are.
Certainly there, as the board well knows, you have commitments every year that grow, whether they be PERS or STRS rates or step and column for our employees as they serve another year or add to their education, the need to comply with new class size reduction types of obligations, all types of things. And yes, 26 million of additional funds sounds great, especially compared to where we've been just a couple years ago. But the reality is, all except for a couple million of that are in essence spoken for by statute or local agreement in some way that's already in place. Doesn't give you a whole lot of flexibility. Message certainly needs to continue to get out.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, now we are to the action part of our calendar. We are going to be discussing the annual financial report and audit, and I did notice that we now have, I put at each of your desks a presentation to the board with audit highlights so that you can kind of take a look at that. Okay, Mr. Fine.
Thank you, and thank you for pointing that out, Mrs. Alvey. I think if one of you doesn't have that, between Kevin and I, we brought about 20 additional copies of it. We both were making sure you were going to have it. As the board's well aware, we contract for an independent audit each year. It's required by law. A large portion of this annual financial report and audit report, we often abbreviate it as calling it the audit report, but the majority of the report is actually the district's own work in our financial statements and our balance sheet, our income statements, and all the related footnotes that contain a lot of interesting information. The auditors get some say on a couple pages where they give you some opinions of items, and this is a process that is reporting, in this case before you tonight, is reporting last year's fiscal year that ended June 30th financial data. It's an audit process that takes about a year from start to finish, and the Finance Committee reviewed this draft of the audit report. had a lengthy conversation in early December with our audit team. And so, Kevin, I lost you. There you are. You moved. I looked back and you weren't in your seat, and I was starting to panic. And so Kevin's going to walk you through the report. The 2 pages that Mrs. Alvey pointed out gives you a great outline as you walk through the report, and Kevin will use that. Kevin, thank you.
Good evening. Hopefully everyone has their audit report handy and the highlights reel. Perfect. First of all, I just want to thank the board for letting me come out and actually speak to you about the audit report. I think it's really important information. It's got a lot of details in there, and I'm going to try and tell you more about the audit process itself, and then also kind of give you hints on how you can maybe use the audit report in the future or find significant information that you may find interesting. Okay? So the audit process starts, as Mike said, it's a year-long process. It usually starts in the spring with visits to school sites. This year we went to about 16 different school sites. That was for attendance testing, which is required by the state. We also look at ASBs while we're out there. As we all know, ASBs are notoriously problematic. We actually make recommendations during that spring visit and then look at the implementation of the district for how things are actually going to be corrected. So more hands that are involved in ASB, obviously, the problems are always going to be there. But the district has taken a proactive stance on correcting minor issues that we do find. Okay? If anything was significant, it would actually have to be reported in the audit report as a finding. Probably that section you turn to first in the audit report whenever you get it. After that, we actually look at compliance issues. So the state and the federal government actually require that we do a lot of audit procedures. So when you look at this audit report, it's not only the financial statements, but it's a compliance audit as well. Okay? We look at internal controls, payroll, disbursements, facilities and maintenance, information technology. All those divisions of the district, they all get a visit from the auditor, whether they like it or not. Okay? And that's to look for deficiencies in controls, or maybe best practices where they can improve upon particular procedures, look for weaknesses or deficiencies. Okay? After that, we come back after the district's actually closed its books, right? So that thing you typically associate the auditors with is auditing, right? Is that looking at the numbers and making sure they're accurate. Now that all concludes in the production of the audit report. As Mike outlined, we actually only own about 8 pages of the audit report. There are opinions and there are letters to you. They're addressed to the governing board and they'll tell you more about the audit. Okay? With that, I'll actually jump into the audit report and we'll kind of go over the highlights reel. I'll try not to spend too much time on it because I did provide the highlights reel, so if you do have questions on anything, you can always look back to it. Okay? Pages 1 and 2 are the most exciting for me. They're actually our opinion on the financial statements. This is where you received the unmodified opinion on the financials. It's the clean opinion on the audit report. It means there are no uncorrected mistakes that are material to the financials. Okay? And that's important. No material non-compliance with laws and regulations. Okay? So that is probably the most important page in the audit report, besides the finding sections in your mind. Now after that is actually management's discussion and analysis. It's on pages 3 through 11. I'll just talk in general about this section. What it is, I'd recommend spending time on this section if you're not that numbers person. So if you get boggled down by seeing those 20 pages of numbers, spend some more time in this section as it reports on revenues, expenditures. It gives you a year-by-year comparison, last year to current year. You can see if the district's what they call net position has changed, whether it's positive or negative, to kind of get a feel for how the district's, kind of handling all of its obligations and its versus its revenues. Okay? There's information on the general fund budget. There's information on going forward, how they're going to put together their budget. Of course, this is as of June 30th, 2014. So just keep that in mind when you are looking at the numbers. You've already seen first interim, so things might not look the same as what you might remember. Okay? After that actually comes the financial statements. I'll just talk about them in general. Pages 12 and 13, these are what's known as the government-wide financial statements. So this combines all the funds, all those governmental and proprietary funds, and they smush it into one statement so you can actually get to that, what they call net position for the district. So you can see assets, liabilities, and the leftovers are what your net position is. Now, as you might have heard, GASB 68 is going to affect the net position of the district, as it's going to make you recognize another obligation that you haven't previously recognized. And we'll actually call out the specific footnote in the audit report that actually talks more in depth about it. After that are the actual fund financial statements. So you'll be familiar with these. They more closely resemble the interim reports, the unaudited actuals. You'll see the general fund called out, then you'll see major funds, and then you'll see a column for all non-major funds. Okay? It's important to understand that if you don't see your favorite fund called out, that it is aggregated in that last column, and there's actually information where you can actually tie that back in a supplementary schedule so you can see everything that's included in the non-major funds. Okay? So when you look at that here, there's a balance sheet, there is a statement of revenues, expenditures, and fund balance. This is all important information as it projects that year-end information for the balance sheet, as well as the income statement, you can call it. It shows you ending fund balance. Okay? Now, if you think about, there are those two kinds of financial statements, those government-wides that we talked about that have your long-term debt, that have your capital assets accounted for it. Then there's those fund financials, let's call them the unaudited actuals presentation. Well, there's reconciliations between the two methods of accounting. Government-wide full accrual and the fund financials modified accrual. Basically saying they don't count capital assets like buildings and land and equipment, nor do they include the GO bonds or compensated absence or those sorts of things. Okay? After that is actually the notes to the financial statements. So if you looked at each page of the numbers in the audit report, at the bottom it always said the notes to the financial statements are an integral part. That's because they address the accounting policies, practices, procedures, how the numbers come about. They basically tell you everything you ever want to know about the number themselves. Okay? Now, note number 1 is very significant as it calls out the specific policies of the district when it comes to each fund that it operates, how it operates them, why they operate in a certain fashion. Okay? Then there's information on cash holdings. So as we all know, school districts generally keep a majority of their cash in cash and county. It talks about the safety about on that. Okay. And then you can also turn on and you'll actually see information on those capital assets you might be aware of. That's actually going to be note, let's see where it is. It's actually going to be note 6 on page 36. It's just interesting to see kind of where the district kind of falls out in a way of buildings, equipment, land versus its accumulated depreciation, which was implemented by GASB 34. Okay. Now, the assets are reported at historical cost, and that's because that's the way the GASB requires them to be. And you get to account for that accumulated depreciation each year. After that, I'd call your attention to note 7, pages 36 through 39, just for informational purposes. It has really great information on outstanding bond issuances. It gives you a flavor for how much is actually outstanding in each of the next 5 years. So in case you ever get approached by a member of the community who wants a little bit more information on, hey, I know you're talking about a new bond, but what do we owe out right now? What's outstanding currently? You can look to this footnote in the audit report and actually get more information. After that, page 45 through 46 is actually the discussion on GASB 68. It talks about how it's taking effect in the 14-15 school year, and it talks you through, why the GASB is making you do it, more or less. And don't ask me why they're making you do it. It's why you have to share that liability with STRS and PERS. It's very complex, and I have my own opinions on it. But ultimately, it's going to be your debt coming forward. Okay? And the liabilities haven't been determined yet. STRS and PERS are actually undergoing their own audits right now to actually allocate out that debt to each district. Okay. After that, inside the audit report actually comes supplementary information. Some of it's required by Governmental Accounting Standards Board. Some of it's required by the State Controller's Office. There is some good information back here. You can look at a snapshot of the general fund budgetary comparison schedule where it shows you the original budget, the last revised budget, and the actual for the year. And it can give you a good view of how the district did budgeting-wise for the general fund. Okay. I will call out one page because it's my favorite one in the supplementary information section. It's called the trend schedule. It's on page 53. It's got great snapshot information on the general fund. It's that where'd you end up for the current year with revenues, expenditures, available reserves, ADA, long-term debt outstanding. But it also has information for the prior 2 years, and then it also has the budget for the next year. That where have you been, where'd you end up, where are you going? Okay. Now, after that, inside the audit report, it's actually going to be those other audit reports. So we have a letter in here that talks about the manner in which we conducted the audit. It talks about governmental accounting standards. The next letter inside the audit report is another opinion letter, and it talks about state compliance. And then that third letter, it talks about federal compliance and whether we found any non-compliance with any rules or regulations. And it says if we do find something that doesn't meet the criteria, then we have to report it as a finding. So we move on to that favorite part of the audit report, the findings section. In the current year, there was only one finding based upon all the testing we did for the federal program, state compliance, the regular school district audit, and it had to deal with credentialing for, typically there's a credential you have to have, it's for English learners. What can happen in general is usually those more or less legacy teachers, those ones that have been with the district for 30, 40 years, don't have to have the or they have a lifetime credential, which means they have to actually go back and acquire another little piece of paper that says, you know what, I am actually able to teach EL students. And this teacher, the one that we selected this year, didn't have that. Okay. Other than that, there were no audit findings. Does anyone have any questions on anything inside the audit report? Because I'd love to answer those questions.
Well, I do. Because I was trying to figure out on your little page 53,
all right,
whether or not, because I see our reserves going down from 2012 to 2013, 14, you know, they're going down. The reserves are going down. Do you happen to know whether or not we have reserves in the state specified minimum?
You mean whether you're above the projected cap? I believe you are, just based on my loose looking at this audit report right here.
Okay.
But there are certain definitions. I mean, it's not in effect yet. There's time.
Oh, there's time to fix that. Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions? No, your little cheat sheet worked great.
You know, I hope you guys, you know, just stick it inside your audit report in case you open it up a few months from now.
That's great. Thank you. I appreciate the effort.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right. Oh, we do have some questions. Mr. Hunt?
If you're prepared to take a motion, I was prepared to.
Oh, okay.
To approve.
Then please do.
Then I would, and thank you for, as the committee asked you to do this little cheat sheet and highlights, and I think it's very helpful. Thank you for doing that and for your work. And with that, I would move to approve item H1.
And I will second, as the other member of that committee. We had a very good, thorough discussion, and I will say I felt really comfortable and happy with the results. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we will now vote on that motion. Mrs. Cloud? Okay. Thank you. That does pass. Thank you very much. And now we have arrived at that point in the meeting where we would talk about board members' comments. I think I'll start tonight with Mr. Lee.
Thank you, President Alavi. Just one quick comment. I did attend that training for Head Start with President Alavi and Mrs. Cowder and Joe Nieto too. And they brought in a facilitator that was very well versed in Head Start and now is a consultant. So it was very interesting to hear about all the requirements in order for us to run that program. And I know that is tedious work by just the amount of people that were in that room that helped make that program run. So appreciate the hard work for our district to make sure our kids have an opportunity to go to preschool, especially those underprivileged kids that their parents or guardians wouldn't otherwise be able to afford to send them. So that was an eye-opener. And then two, depending on how the board feels, based on that last study session at STEM, we received a lot of new information regarding curriculum, some directional statements, some long-term planning, and since it was basically a study session, we really didn't get a staff recommendation. So I don't know if we need another study session, but I would like the staff to kind of review the information that we got over the study session in terms of the curriculum, in terms of the long-term facilities plan. I know we authorized some significant spending in this year, and probably going to have to do the same for next year. So I just want to make sure that we're headed in the right direction, facilities-wise, curriculum-wise, and equity-wise, looking at the demographics and the lottery and the waiting list and all of that. So if we can just get a report, if the board would be in agreement, and recommendation from staff. I'm not looking for anything next week or next month, but maybe within the quarter, that would be very helpful to this board member. And that's about all I have tonight.
Thank you. And with the board's permission, I'd sort of like to offer my comments now because they reference Mr. Lee's comments. When there is new information that has come up and new viewpoints that haven't been discussed before, such as what I think is happening with STEM, I think it might help the board to possibly bring this back to our next meeting as a discussion item. In that way, we can hear about what some of these new thoughts are and see where staff is in preparation and what they've been working on, and see if we're all on the same page. So if it's okay with everybody, I would like to place this issue on our next agenda. I wanted to remind everybody that it's been approximately 1 year since we started that ad hoc committee a year ago, which we pulled together to answer the very questions we're now troubled with again. And that we've had 3 opportunities to speak publicly about the issue, but it still doesn't seem that we are able to totally come to some happy consensus. So I believe that if, after careful consideration, if staff has suggestions and they've got better ideas, that we should be hearing that. Also, just so that we're on the same page, I wanted everyone to know that I went back to see whether or not we have voted consistently on all of our choice programs, and we have. We've dealt with them exactly the same, whether they were STEM or DLI or core knowledge. And that is that we have given staff generalized direction, but we have not actually voted. All of those programs were discussed in the discussion capacity. And then finally, most importantly, I wanted to say that the main thing that we were concerned about when we started that ad hoc committee 1 year ago was the primary goal to create a world-class STEM education and to consider really what is the best for our students, for these students who wanted this kind of classic STEM education. And I'd like to see that. What is this world-class STEM education going to look like? And that should take precedence over facilities, but it should not take precedence over curriculum. Because, you know, that should be part of it. But the facilities should follow what we wanted to do to make this the world-class STEM school. So that's just, I was just going to follow up his comments with mine of my own, and also mention that there's a wonderful grand opening of the RUSD Family Resource Center located here at the Riverside Adult School on February 5th from 3 to 5 with a brief ceremony at 4 o'clock, which is so exciting because that's something Patricia and I have been talking about for years, so very excited about that. So thank you for letting me go out of turn. Mr. Hunt.
Thank you, Ms. Alvey, and thank you for those comments. Madam President, I'm glad you're bringing that back. And things do change, and we do want to hear what the staff has advanced it on. I want to just compliment the staff on the new carpet. The glue in that carpet is probably the only thing holding that building together, but that's good. It won't fall over again. Teen Challenge, I would just ask the staff to look at a couple things. Teen Challenge has been part of Riverside since 1971. I was contacted by Mr. Ron Black, who's head of their education programs. Their programs are overseen for some reason by him at Unified, and he would like a conversation and have those programs. He'd like to come under our wing, and it seems to make sense that it would. It's over there in Benedict Castle. So I don't know the history on it. I'm sure others do, but if we could look at that. I do want to say that I'm looking, is the 17th of February is our workshop?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
I'm looking forward to that, and I hope, I want to tell the board members, I really need to compliment our staff, Dr. Lewis and his folks, and Mike, of course, for a really good operations committee meeting that we had that sort of sets the stage for this. And I think just the best discussion I've been part of on the 7 years on the board for a strategic plan about how to use these properties. I mean, the Grow Riverside is really exciting, what our staff has come up with to be innovative and somewhat very beneficial to us in cost. And also just the district office. You know, we've talked about how we would do a different district office and what is needed and where and all that. And I'm excited about what they've come up with, and with Mrs. Alavi's and my input, we'll be hearing that then. Let's see. I'm anxious to hear more about the matching grants for CTE, and Mr. Weston, I'm looking, he's here, but looking forward to what he has to say. As Mike mentioned, I was talking to him about the growth areas that we have. Some people may not like it, but we are going to be, because we're part of the Golden Triangle connected to the Long Beach LA ports, we're going to be the distribution logistics area for this part of the country. And we have the only port that can take the new super not tankers, but freight lines. There's nothing else on the western coast, including up in Vancouver, that can do that. So it's going to be part of our future, and we need to get out ahead of it for our young people. Speaking of that, I was at the Good Morning Riverside, as some of you have been, and 2 meetings ago, the colonel over at March, Hessmeyer, spoke, and he talked about that they have a military alliance. In other words, they have a sort of a program that talks about military careers and opens their eyes to kids about that with Moreno Valley. I gave him my card. I received a note just this afternoon from Captain Baird, and interested in discussing that with us. I moved it on to the superintendent and asked him to meet and see how that works and bring it back to the board and our curriculum committee. But the military is becoming more and more difficult to qualify for young people. And it is it's my dad's career where he began. It is a good life, but it's become, just like logistics, very technical. So I'd like to find out more about that and how we can maybe help our young people be part of their programs. And and lastly, I'll bring that up later. I do want us to think about that we are the only district, we're one of 2 districts, I should say, pardon me, in Riverside County that is still on the old calendar. And it's something that we need to really pay attention to. I had a discussion just because I stopped by to see Dr. Rowe when the young man passed and just see how he was doing on the campus and all. And we just talked about a few things. And one of them was the calendar. And he actually has a pretty unique idea that he's going to share with Dr. Hanson that may be able to keep, maybe a Solomon-type idea that keep us on the current start dates, but be able to have, for high school, to finish before. And when you really listen to I think this next time, with all respect to Mrs. Yabar, who gave a very good report, but to have a principal like Michael and others tell us what the challenges are for young people going into the year, what they have to do in the summertime, and then over the Christmas vacation. We had one young lady talk tonight about cram for the exam, in the middle of January, and it would be much better if they were crammed for the exam and then went home for Christmas break. So I hope we can bring that issue up again, that discussion, and take a new look at it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Mrs. Clubb. A couple of things, a couple of observations. One is I feel like Mr. Fine should wear a crown around his head that says compliance, because more and more that's what we're having to do is comply, whether it's with Head Start, lots and lots of regulations, with curriculum, with finances, and it all in the name of local control, which isn't. So it's very frustrating to those of us who know that we're the innovators here in our district. We are the ones that know what our kids need. We're the ones who serve our community and should be in touch with the community, not Sacramento and not Washington, D.C. And the more and more they tell us that they're giving us freedom, the more and more I feel like our hands are tied. And I know everybody doesn't share that, but I am not a fan of big government. I'm not a fan of even future planning, you realize a few years ago in Germany, I'll use that as an example, because it is a stratified economic system. When you find out that, you've funneled all of these kids into widget making, and widget making isn't working anymore, and you want to funnel them over here in this new system over here, you don't have the time, you're stagnant, you're not entrepreneurial. What makes our education system work, what makes our economic system work, is that we have flexibility and we can support entrepreneurs. When you get a government-controlled system, you become stagnant, and it takes too long to change. And I would show you the difference between UCR and Cal Baptist in education. When there's a change in educational needs, Cal Baptist can turn it around in a few months. UCR takes much longer because you have to go through the state. So, we need to, it's frustrating to me to watch what we're doing, even with predicting what the state is doing with CTE. Okay, so we're going to be the warehouse community, the high-wage community that pays, $20 an hour? When we need plumbers and electricians and whatnot, people who are technicians of Stater Brothers, we need those. They can make $30, $40 an hour, and yet that's not considered a high-wage industry. It's insane. So I hope that we can articulate some of these positions because those are the kinds of things we need. Warehouse workers don't need a lot of training, And it's just frustrating. And I would proffer Mr. Hunt that maybe we're the cutting edge of the calendar situation. A few years back, if you remember, we were all year round, and that was the latest thing that was going to save our education system. And then everybody went back to a more traditional calendar. So I think we need to be really careful when we design the kinds of calendars and things for our kids that they're really going to be educationally beneficial. And the other observation I had, because I was home Christmas break and I was watching my grandkids use their technology, and I extrapolated a little. But they're very dependent on the technology for entertainment and everything else. And you literally have to say, no more, now, go play. And it has real ramifications because I just read a study that it's not just what you eat that causes obesity, but how you sit that causes obesity. We need to get our kids out and running around and put limits on the technology. And I'd like us to be mindful of that because we're giving the kids more and more technology and devices and all, but we need to make sure that it's getting the desired effect. So anyway, that's my soapbox for tonight.
Thank you, Mrs. Cohen.
Thank you.
Mrs. Lockdawson. You better make some room on the soapbox. No, I totally agree about the technology stuff with the 3 kids. I have to get them, I have to unplug them. And there is author, Richard Louv, came up with a name for that disorder. He called it nature deficit disorder. And kids are very much divorced from their natural world. And there are benefits, not only health, but mental, to getting out there. So I make my kids do it. Really quickly, I just had a couple things. I don't know if, Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome back to the school year and all that good stuff. But I was struck by a woman that we saw speak at the CSBA conference in December. And she has started this nonprofit group called Black Girls Code. Did anybody else see that? You guys, I think you were in there, yeah.
Really fascinating.
And this is an interesting idea to me, not just because it's to teach primarily African American girls about computer coding and programming, but not just them. I think any child can benefit from that. Getting back to the high wage, all that sort of thing. There are very many technical positions that require computer programming, and getting our kids starting early is a very good CTE way. A good way to go about achieving our CTE goals. So we might want to look into more of that. Also, I was a little bit concerned about, I think it was, Mrs. Lopez who spoke about the special ed. And I know there's more sides to that story, but that really affected me. So I know, like at Emerson, my kids, the special ed kids come in the regular award ceremony and get their awards for their kinds of stuff. So I don't know. I know somebody's going to look into that, so I just wanted to let you know it concerned me. Grow Riverside, I'm part of the Food Systems Alliance, so I was glad to see Mr. Davey here tonight. And you probably know Mr. Rodney Taylor is heavily involved in it as well, so he's been involved. So it's a good thing for us to be working with. And last but not least, I am looking forward to serving on the Communications Subcommittee. Thank you, Mrs. Alabi, for pointing me to that, as well as the student activities. And I want to get with staff to set up a regular series of meetings for communication, much like we do instruction, and monthly, perhaps. I don't know who would be doing that.
Jackie Paul has been doing it.
Okay, so I'll work with Dave and Jackie to get those set up. So if going forward we have a regular meeting date, so anybody and everybody that has a communications issue can feel free to fly their flag. Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you all. I would like to tonight close our meeting, adjourn it in the name of Mrs. Nyla Gates, former teacher's aide for 16 years with RUSD, who passed away on November 30th. Mrs. Juanita Porch, former RUSD employee for 25 years, who passed away on December 27th. Celeste Alvarez, Amelia Earhart Middle School student, who passed away unexpectedly on January 2nd. And Anne Marie Peterson, a teacher at Chemawa Junior High School. We close in their honor. Thank you.